All right, here is a 620 quad track from IH. So we'll start out the front again. Okay, this one has got a little easier, got a little T-handle right here to pull, and it is substantially easier to actually open than the other one. Okay, the cooling package, we got a fuel cooler right here, AC, and this is actually going to be our radiator back behind there. This hose is actually got a quick coupler. That's actually an air bleed on there. So when you guys have to change coolant, there actually is a diagnostic procedure for bleeding that air. This is our hydraulic oil cooler, so I mean just absolutely massive hoses going to that. So yeah. And then our air to air is tucked actually back a little bit. Actually, this one doesn't even have an air to air. They've gone away from it. This has got water jacket cooling, so that's something we're starting to see a lot more of, just for the ease of emissions. Basically, we have a very constant temperature coming into our engine for emissions. So as far as looking in here, we don't have any direct drive to our fan. That is a hydraulic motor back behind there. So that hydraulic driven variable speed, which is amazing. The thing with that, let me crawl up here, you got your fuel pump, and then right down there, that is actually your hydraulic pump, literally dedicated to your fan, driven off the back of the engine. So it has got one extra pump on there. Yeah, this one's a little tighter in there. They're all tight, but we got just kind of our normal stuff. Coolant's nice and easy to get to. Our air cleaner is right back up there. So the John Deere was definitely easier as far as that goes. The other thing that you'll notice, okay, we have a very large muffler, and then as you go to the side, it is extremely huge compared to everybody else. So they do that, they make it really wide or really long, just so it slimlines with the cab cross members a little more. Track members or track frame, we look here, we're not near as tall. That John Deere was almost about this high as far as height of the entire track goes. So we don't have, they wrapped around almost clear to here. This is going to be a very positive drive. So this is actually a Camso track. Looking at it, we just come off back behind our track unit. Doesn't have near as much stuff on here. This is actually stationary from, or factory from Case IH, is the clear view lenses. You can get those aftermarket for pretty much every tractor that's out there anymore. Here we have our bleed for our, we can pressure test our track. We can bleed it off right there if we were going to change that. So if we needed to, we could, for changing tracks, different stuff like that. As far as looking in here, okay, it is very, very tight. You're not going to look, this is the 36-inch wide belt as well. So underneath, first thing we see is a tow cable going all the way back, drooped all the way to there. Okay, we got our radar sensor right here, and then we got our engine. So a lot tougher to get underneath, but once you get underneath, it ain't bad. Okay, coming around. Our def tank, and then right here we actually have this is actually our valve body, basically for our axle lube cooling system. This is actually our axle lube cooling filter or our loop filter. So what they're going to do is they're actually going to push air into the system. As this oil comes through, they're going to actually induce air to get that. They're going to pump air with the oil to our axles. That's going to actually force everything back to our tanks to get cooled. So that is kind of unique on there. 2 battery cutoffs, fuses. Okay, our center pin, we got our air ride cab is basically factory everywhere anymore for these. So this one is going to be a little bit different than the Deere. We have a massive uniball down below right here. So that uniball is almost like 12-inch diameter ball. That's going to allow we're going to articulate, as well as we're going to actually get our side to side or vertical, or I guess our axial movement in that as well. So that one does go out quite a bit. They are going to get rebuilt quite a bit. This top bar here is going to have some pins there. Notice where John Deere had a gudgeon bearing right here, they don't have that anymore. So they run their drive line straight through. Fairly easy to, I mean, it's nice and open back in there. This one's got a PTO as well, so a little lower. So the whole thing, the John Deere was about a foot taller in here. This one's a little bit lower, and with that they get a little more leverage. This one will have to, as you get hours on it, you're gonna have to replace bushings and bearings on here. Literally split the tractor in half and change pins and bushings in here. We got our as we start articulating, this is actually telling us basically how it's an electronic sensor. This is actually also a feedback. This is actually hydraulic. They're doing two different types of feedback for that. Fuel tank is all steel, and it's not near as wide, but it is still just about the same capacity, just a little bit taller. So nice, easy to get to the filters. They're doing the same thing basically as John Deere. They're pumping this oil through these large hoses right here all the way to the back. Then we're going to divvy it out there. So here is our tow cable support. So that's pretty common on these tractors. As you can see, our steering cylinders are a little harder to get to. They're not in the open like the John Deere's were. So there's good and bad with that. Coming back here, we have 6 remotes on this instead of just 4 is what the Deere had. That's all optional. So we have our ISO hookup, so that's literally going to plug right into the cart. We got our electrical, we got all the different computers and stuff too. So we got the wiring, so the valve stacks are sitting vertical instead of horizontal like the Deere's were. We still have the drop box right here, and that's our lube line coming in, and then our PTO coming out. That top bar for the center hinge, this is actually the back of that top bar. So what they're using is they're using a leverage factor coming clear off the back. They're saying that transfers quite a bit more power to the front, gets a little more weight up there where we need to get it applying power. So there's a bearing in here as well that needs to be rechecked and greased all the time. So we have our oil lines coming in, load sense there, case drain, power beyond. So yeah, pretty, I mean, all of them are getting pretty slim lined back here. So this one's actually got LED lights. And this tractor is locked, so I will try to come down here and get a key so we can view in the cab, because that is fairly important, but we'll see what I can do here. So coming up from the cab, this ladder actually is tied to our articulation, so it gives us a nicer step to crawl up, but as we were to turn, that track would come into this. So this whole step assembly is actually going to pivot forward as we start turning. So hydraulic tank right here, transmission reservoir right there. So a lot of computers, a lot of hookups on the back. So as far as service work, they're putting most of the stuff in a pretty easy place to actually get to as far as technicians go. Right above there, we got a little more room than the John Deere had as far as being able to get on top of the transmission. Not that you're going to do it anyways, but most of the time the cab removal is going to be crucial on this one. Coming in, okay, this is from the back of the cab, so our view is still quite a bit more obstructed than the John Deere. That's the one thing that I noticed quite a bit. The handle, the controls, they're all very similar, stuff like that, red leather. So but lots and lots of cab glass on this one, which is going to create more heat load. As far as coming out the back, we're going to actually have fairly decent visibility down. So yeah. So until next time, have a good one, guys.